the American rule. And under the American rule, there's something of a reasonableness standard, right? Where even if you are the first person who perhaps appropriates water, if you're using it in a wasteful fashion, that's for later, sorry, a wasteful fashion or an unreasonable fashion, the court can say, okay, yeah, you were the first to appropriate it, but we're going to give it to someone else. So in all cases, it's multiple people claiming appropriation, but who gets to keep it? All right? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't turn the attendance on. Let me do that right now. If I forget, just remind me because I don't always remember. All right, but then we have the third rule, which is the Western rule, which always gives students the most difficulty. So how does the Western rule differ from the... Oh, there he is. I'm answering your question. So I think I gave you the wrong answer last class because I didn't understand your question. I went back and I replayed it in my head and realized I told you the wrong thing. All right, so the Western rule is a little bit different. Again, you have different people. One person says, I get it first because I appropriated first. And then someone else says, no, even if we got it first, he's not using it in the right fashion. So how does the court decide who gets it? The person who appropriates it first or some other factor, right? With the Eastern rule, the court will just say, well, you have to get it first. And we also say, are you using it in a reasonable fashion? If you got there first and you're wasting the water, you're just blowing it everywhere, you're just pouring out and wasting the water, we'll say we'll give it to the other guy who's using it more reasonably. But the Western rule is a little bit different. It's not just did you get there first and use it reasonably. It's did you get there first and are you putting it to a beneficial use? Okay, so if you appropriate it first and it turns out you're not using it in a beneficial fashion, the court can say, all right, you know what? Under these circumstances, we're going to the other guy who maybe got there second. Right? So again, then I apologize. The reason why I answered your question wrong is I forgot to clarify. First appropriation is always there. It's always going to be an issue. But it's first appropriation plus beneficial. It's not instead of. Did that answer your question? It's clear now?
Yeah.
So if you ever, I tell you, I've been doing this now for a decade. My most dreaded question, which makes me shiver. You think you're afraid of my questions? The question that makes me afraid is, it says in the book. So it's like, uh-oh, Josh, what'd you do? And then I have to sort of go back to my reading, look at my notes, and realize, because we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. So whenever a student says I said something inconsistent with the book, I take that very seriously, because sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. Often it's usually, I didn't quite understand the question, but I always go back. And actually, my second section, I clarify that point for them, so you're paying it forward. All right. Everyone get that point in the water rights question? I didn't make that clear last week. I apologize, or last class, and I apologize, but hopefully I did it here. Yeah, that's the question. Professor Blackman says in the book, oh crap, what did I do wrong? Because that means you close read, right? You did the reading closely enough to read the book and recognize that there's something that might be in tension with what I said here. So it's always fair to ask. All right, so please, everyone, sign in for the attendance. Let me go through some of the questions we had from our last session, if we can. And these exit poll questions are very helpful for me. I always read them right after class, and it sort of lets me know what perhaps wasn't clear, because there are 85 of you, and I can't always call on every one of you. Okay. If you asked about the Hot News Doctrine, this was referenced in the notes after the INS case. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It doesn't have much relevance. This actually arose from something as antiquated as pagers. You know what a pager is? It's like a beeper, right? So before people had cell phones, they had pagers, these little beeper devices, and you would get like sports scores on them. So, what's the latest score for the Knicks game or whatever it is, right? But Motorola, which made these pager devices, wasn't paying the NBA, the National Basketball Association. So there were discussions of, can you relay this for breaking news? And there are all these cases. They're kind of outdated. Now everyone pays for everything, so it's not really relevant, but it's in the notes, so just you should be there. Do you need to know the name of judges? Not really. Not in this class, at least. In common law, you will. But you should at least know what the different views are. So, for example, in the Moore case, there's 4 judges. What is Justice Arabian's concurrence? You got who Arabian is, right? So it might be useful. Justice Pinelli's majority opinion. So in some of the cases, you probably will need to know the name just to identify which view we're talking about. That's the short answer. All good, all good, all good. Yes, quasi property. That'll be the first question for the poll today. Oh, yes, back-to-back quasi property. See, whenever I see questions clustered, that means I know I have to do it again. Okay. And can you see these questions in the back? I realize that, yeah, let me go bigger. There we go. How's that? Yeah, I just was like the kids in the back probably can't even see what I'm talking about. So I apologize for that. How can courts create federal common law? They can't anymore. How deep understanding do you need for IP? Fair question, shallow, right? I gave you maybe 15 minutes on it. That's all I'm going to ask for. What you do need to know, though, is the idea of creation, acquisition by creation. That's where I care about. You'll take later class in IP, and you'll learn much more than we do here. Okay, this is the hot news. Quasi property, same. Good. Thank you. Okay, that's it. All right. Yeah, again, very helpful question. Anything else in your mind from last class? All right, so let's do what several of you asked me to do. Question number 1, short answer. Define, and who's next? We're gonna have to. Okay, I don't see a name tag, but we'll get one in a minute. Okay, so your question is going to be, what is quasi property? What is quasi property? Excuse me. Okay. All right, Holden, I'll give you another 5 seconds. All right, what do you put here, Holden?
This is like partial.
What do you mean partial?
It's not fully property, but it could be seen. It's not fully something that is going to be trademarked, but it's something that.
Oh, okay. So hold on. If you request a trademark, right, and you get one from the government, is that property?
For a period of time.
So do you need the government's approval for something to be property? Ooh. Do you need the government's license to call something property?
There's a lot of things that do, yeah.
So what about before copyright existed? It's only a modern invention, the 1800s or so. Was there no property? Can property exist without the government? Yeah, try. Seriously, you're watching fall at some point this semester. It will happen, I promise.
I would think it'd be much harder to regulate something like property without a government.
Is that Margaret?
Yes.
Are you next, or is it James? Margaret, what'd you put here, please?
For quasi property?
Yes.
Something that resembles property. It's not quite property, but the court wants to protect it. But they also don't want to call it property. Okay,
good. I think the two of you more or less got what I'm looking for. Let me try to give you a shorter definition. It's something that has many of the attributes of property, but it doesn't have all the aspects of property. There's a concept in your reading. I don't know if maybe you picked up on it. Talking about property is like a bundle of sticks. Or bundle of rights. Did you notice that? Right. So this is a concept that law professors have been using forever to describe property, right? Property is not a solid thing. Property has different attributes. Or do you have a micro? I found this yesterday. I have a microphone. I didn't even know this. I have a microphone. Look at this, right? Property has attributes or different features. All right. So let's talk about land for a minute. And Paige, let's go back to our first day of class. Sorry, Johnson versus McIntosh. We have this territory of the Indians. What were the Indians allowed to do on the land?
Occupy.
Good, occupy. What could the Indians not do with the land? Perfect. Good memory. Very good. So they can occupy the land, but they could not buy or sell the land. So again, think of property as different attributes, right? Maybe one stick in this bundle is the right to occupy, and another stick is the right to sell. They have the occupy stick, but not the selling stick. Page, could the Americans occupy the land?
Yes.
Could they sell the land?
Yes.
Could they exclude the Indians from the land? You got a bundle, right? So the idea of a bundle of rights is when you put together different facets or attributes of what property is. So quasi property is like something that doesn't have a full bundle, right? Right? They can't quite have a copyright on the news article, but they still have some right to exclude others from copying it, which is exactly what they held in the INS case, right? They exclude the other competitor from copying their news stories, right? We'll talk a lot about this bundle of rights concept. It'll come up over and over and over again, but it helps us sort of separate. And so when you're talking about quasi property, you have some sticks, some aspects of this bundle, but not the full bundle. And to Holden's question, the government can give you a full bundle, right? The government can say, here's your copyright. You can buy this copyright. You can sell it. You can exclude others for a period of time, for 7 years after your death, or whatever it happens to be. But you need that permission from the government to get that full bundle. What the court did here was they did something short of that. They said, well, we can't give you the full bundle. We'll give you this, a limited quasi right to your property. All right, very good. Yes, Will, go ahead.
Do you need all three? There are like 2 of the 3.
There are many more sticks I'm even mentioning now. Right, there are a lot of different sticks in the bundle. But I just mentioned a couple of the big ones. We'll do more of the bundles later, but the right to exclude is very important. All right, questions so far? All right, so I hope you have a good definition for your notes on what quasi property is. All right, so let's sort of shift gears for a bit. Oops, sorry. And let's shift gears for a bit to a very different case, one I suspect you studied torts. Yes? That's fine. There's actually a lot of overlap of property and torts. That's okay. I won't make you stand like Professor Moore, or yeah, you guys can stay seated. The Moore case, right, is an unusual case. We're not talking about acquiring land or territory. We're not talking about acquiring wild animals like a fox or a whale or a duck. We're not even talking about property in something you create, like a piece of clay or a brick or a statue or a painting or even a news article. We're talking about property in yourself, in your body, in your cells, in cells that are removed from your body that can generate other cells. And this is a very, I think, controversial issue. If you look at the opinions on the court, the judges don't agree with each other. They vigorously disagree. How many cases we have this semester with vigorous dissents? Like none, like maybe 2 or 3 this entire semester. But there are vigorous dissents on which people invoke morality, religion, faith. And the answers here aren't obvious. And sometimes you think things go one way, then they go the other way. So I always regret this question. I'll ask it anyway. I don't actually regret it, but I know it takes a while to sort of work through. All right. There's no answer C here. Let's see. Question number 2. We'll see what happens here. And there's not a right or wrong answer, please. I don't. This is based on how you think about this case, I think, or other things, whatever. Is body property true or false? Actually, I think I read the answer question. Your body is property, true or false? That's the question. Sorry about that. I realized I didn't put it as an actual question. Faith. Right, your body's property. Thank you all. I can't pose a true or false question. I'll fix it for another lecture. Oops, your body's property. True or false? Okay. Let's see what we got. We got 72. Okay, we got just about everyone. Okay. That was it. Okay. So about 2/3 of you, 67%, said true, your body's property. And about a third of you said it's not property. Okay, Jaime, what'd you put here, sir?
I put your body is property.
Okay, tell me why you put that, please.
Well, you can sell your body for a variety of reasons,
Can you sell your body while you're living?
parts of it.
Which parts?
It has just prostitution, to make an example.
Yeah, it is an example.
I think that's more of a service, it's not, but I think that's still applicable here.
Okay, Jacob, what'd you put here?
I put true.
All right. Tell me why you put true.
Well, I thought it was sort of like the Sobi Raffione principle, where it's like you have ownership over something, and it's like you have the right to do with what you want. And I know, as an example, like surrogate mothers are often paid like hefty amounts of money.
To carry a child to term. Lisa.
I submit as well.
All right, I want someone who puts false, so I'll come back to you, Lisa, in a bit. Bailey?
I said no.
Okay, good. I'll come back to you immediately. So why you put no?
I guess if it is property, then I feel like that leaves way to exploiting your body or parts of it, and it becomes, you think of it as like commerce almost, and I don't like to think of myself or other people in that way, I guess.
Why is there risk of exploitation? People can buy and sell a house, buy and sell a fox, or buy and sell a baseball. Why can't they buy and sell a body or their body?
Because oftentimes when there's body parts being sold, sometimes the person's dead, and I feel like,
Well, if they're dead, they're dead. What do we care about?
I mean,
They're dead.
I'm not sure.
Jack, you put yes or no? All right, good. Why'd you put no?
I think it's also kind of an issue with like, it mentions in the case like commodification, where like you kind of treat it as something that has market value. So I think.
But doesn't it?
What's that?
I mean, doesn't if you're on a waiting list for a kidney and you're gonna die if you don't get a kidney transplant in a certain number of months, that's a valuable commodity, isn't it?
Yeah, I think.
What's wrong with
also-
commodifying something that's valuable, Doc? These are valuable organs. You need a transplant.
Yeah, I think, like personally, I put no, but I think there's a limit, like blood, plasma, like you can.
Okay. So, can you sell blood and plasma as much as you want?
Maybe not plasma, but.
Well, so people in college know the limits, right? So if you live in a college town, which I think many of you did, there are plasma banks in every college town, right? Why, Jack? Is there always plasma
Because,
banks?
I mean, it is valuable.
And do they put limits how much you can sell? Do anyone know what the limits are?
I don't think so.
You only sell so much a week, I think, and it's usually people do it for your money. They get the plasma, they have money for, that's at least how it's, college towns, that's what people did. But what's unique about blood and plasma, Jack, one more, how is blood and plasma different than, say, kidney?
Because I mean, like,
Do you grow back the kidney if you take it out?
no, you only have one spare is what's important to.
All right, very good. So I think I'll come back to Lisa in a minute. I apologize for skipping over, but let me just talk for a bit. So this is a very difficult question, right? Because if you answer yes, right, and you say that body is property, then with that property right comes the ability to buy and sell. Right? If it is property, then it's no different than a fox or a baseball or a widget or whatever else you have. And if you can buy and sell property, that means a body is commodified. So it leads to Heidi said prostitution. It leads to perhaps markets for organs, right? Kidneys. Right, Lisa, what about assisted suicide? Suicide, I mean, you can't actually prosecute suicide because the person's dead, but attempted suicide you can prosecute, and assisted suicide you can prosecute. Why should we criminalize a person who wishes to take their life? Okay, tell me why not.
I think something with like assisted suicide, and I believe from my limited knowledge in the country to do a lot of it, this is a very regulated thing.
I think Denmark has the assisted suicide, remember correctly? No? Does not have it, okay. Just checking. Just checking. All right. So we have issues like assisted suicide. We have issues like prostitution. Jaime mentioned that a minute ago. John, what about controlled substances and putting stuff in your body?
Should it be legal or not?
I don't know, it's your body.
I think there's policy reasons why it shouldn't be legal.
Why?
Because I think endangering yourself can also endanger the people around you.
Okay.
So, if I get drunk and drive a car.
Okay, so you ban drunk driving, but just simple possession of the house, you're not going anywhere.
I guess it's more of like a promoting drugs thing. If we allow it, then we promote it. And if we promote it, then people damage themselves. And
All right.
I don't know if that.
All right, so let's see how far we can take this, right? So we have assisted suicide, we have prostitution, we have drugs. Frank, sorry, you're next. Indentured servitude. Can you sell yourself in a labor contract?
Your services, not your body.
Well, what's performing those services?
I mean, you're manual labor, but
Yeah, so someone has control. You say for the next X years, I will work for you.
If someone can't sell you, you have to sell your own.
Why?
Why?
But what if you agree to work for one person, someone sells that contract to another person, just like you're trading a cattle livestock. You grow a cow and then someone else buys that livestock.
I think it's locked in as a service contract.
So it's just a service contract.
What's under the.
You can be bought and sold, just like a head of cattle. Yeah. Callie, what do you think? Indentured servitudes.
I don't think you should be able to sell on.
Why not? If it's just a commodity.
Because you would be having no say in what.
All right, let's try another one. Aaron, what about selling children? Now, I'm not talking about adoption. I'm talking about selling it. You have an eBay auction for the highest bidder for a pregnant woman.
I think that's going too hard.
Okay, tell me why. I finally found something going too far. I found it's only 8 people. Why is selling children going too far? We can go for servitude. Why is selling children too far?
I think it just opens up a can of worms first. I mean, you can't regulate them.
Sure, you have a government auction, right? You have a society with a low birth rate, like China or some other place, right? We start incentivizing children, make it worth their mother's while.
I think that's like a very desperate solution for some people. Like if they were in a temporarily desperate position, they might be inclined.
But why is it wrong?
What?
Why is it wrong? You said it went too far. Why is it opening a can of worms?
Because I guess just it can cause people to make rash decisions.
Oh, people make dumb decisions about everything. They buy houses they can't afford. They buy an expensive car they can't afford.
Because they're involving like another life.
So what? It's property. It's a commodity. Elizabeth, waiting with the selling children. I finally found something that pushed you guys over the edge. I was waiting for the entire row.
I think there's a difference in selling somebody else.
No, it's your child. You made it. Both parents consent. Both parents consent. They made it.
I feel like it's different whenever personal, like, why you can consent to it.
Okay, so then how about selling yourself? Selling yourself. Go back to the indentured servitude question. You sell yourself.
I think you consent to it, so it's your body. You chose.
What about your offspring? While you're a servant, you give birth to an offspring. Is that also a rationing solely, right? Owner of the. If you consent to you sell yourself, does the boss get the fruits of your labor? Literally. You're nodding. Aaron, you're nodding. No. Yes, I saw you were nodding.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, Aaron. I was looking at Aaron. I think you were nodding.
Oh, no, I was saying, like your child is not you.
Okay. All right, Crespin. So let's try this again. Can you sell yourself?
Yeah, you can sell parts of yourself.
Nice. You changed my question. Smart guy, right? Smart dude. I didn't say parts. I said, can you sell yourself? Put your whole self in, right? Hooky pokey, the entire thing. Not just the arm, not just chicken all about. The 3-year-old, this is what I know. And can that contract be sold to a third party?
It shouldn't.
What if you're a baseball player, you get traded?
You still have to
Ooh.
approve the third.
Not always.
Really,
No. Baby, it's no, it's not. There was actually a lot of litigation whether a player can oppose a trade.
I think it's a different context, though.
Why? You're being forced to play for one team and you get sent to another team. Just shift that. Say, all right, clean up your locker and go across town, get to the airport. You're not a free agent. The entirety of a free agency, by the way, is not an obvious, this is a sport. You may know sports. In sports, if you're under a contract, unless you have some clause barring a trade, you're going wherever you're going. Now, I guess you can say, I'm not going to play, and then you forfeit your salary. They're not going to, throw you in jail for it. But you have no control over yourself. James, selling children. What do you think? What about all those poor mothers who are not able to conceive and they want to incentivize the creation of children? There's a huge shortage of adoptions. You have people have to wait years for adoption. Why can't we create incentives?
I mean, because they don't even have a say, and you're practically looking at them as a commodity.
But what's an adoption?
Rights.
With an adoption, the kid has no say. You're an infant. We're already giving.
But he has.
We're already
rights.
giving parents. We're already taking a kid from parent A to parent B. Why don't we just make it worth their while? Lots of money is already changed. Trust me, with adoption, international, lots of money is changing hands, my friends. Trust me on this one. It's not all above board. Don't just make it kosher, right? Let's make an actual regulated marketplace. We put in a bid, $30,000 a kid, $50,000 a kid, whatever the number is. Pick a number. Trust me, people. If people have adopted, international, there's money changing hands. This is not like a hunky-dory process. All right, Hayden. So let's talk about organ sales, right? Selling a kidney. You have two of them, right back there. Make them a bad couple of ice. You know what happened, right? Who do I sell one kidney? You can donate one. Why can't you sell it? Finally, someone said morality. My goodness, I'm real heathens here, right? Let's talk morality for a bit. Tell me, why is it morally wrong?
Because morally, it shifts it from doing it for the beneficial purpose for someone else.
The Western rule, right? Yeah.
For your own purpose instead, for your own.
Why is it immoral to do something for your own benefit? Let's do.
Because while your body is your property, it shouldn't be able to be.
I don't know, guys. That's right. You want to say something, James?
Maybe it's trying not to incentivize commercializing ourselves.
Well, why is that wrong? We forgot prostitution. Someone's like, I make the prostitution. Why is that wrong?
I mean, it probably creates more crime, would you say that?
So what? No, we're regulating the marketplace. You walk into CVS and you pick up a kidney, right? No. Why not? You go and buy a pack of gum, buy a kidney. One at a time. One at a time. You got to raise your hand. All right. So Max, do you think you should be able to sell a kidney?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What about selling 2 kidneys? Let's say you're really down on your luck. You want to take your life. No. Let me finish my question. You want to take your life. decided you no longer wish to live, and before you go, you say, I'm gonna ferret out my body to help people, and that way my family can receive, because you're not gonna prosper, but you want your family to benefit from, save no life insurance, right? And you decide to take your life, and you wanna ferret out your organs to different people. I think you said someone said assisted suicide a few minutes ago.
I think you should be able to make that choice, yeah.
So there's nothing immoral or profane about it.
In my opinion.
So we got, I think I hit all my topics, right? I got them all. I got prostitution, drugs, assisted suicide, selling children, selling organs, plural. Did I miss anything? I think I know my examples. I think I have all. You want to jump in? I got a nice. Yeah.
Well, I feel like
Clinton Gore 93. Man, you got a lot of Clinton stuff.
I just like Clinton stuff, but like, I think the value of human life, you allow that.
The value of human life? Why? Who cares?
Yeah, because like if you allow that to be valued as human life, you know, society as a whole is not gonna allow it. It's gonna be like not as accepted as a society. You may not want that in society.
Yeah, but says who? Obviously, if people want this, and that's what society wants, right? So it says who? No, I mean, it's a fair question. Who gets to decide? People say, this is not who we are. Well, if you're doing it, that is who you are, right? In other words, if a society adopts a policy, that is who they are. That's a policy they adopt. Of course, it's the courts or the legislature who's actually adopting it, but there's not a single set of governing principles that are in stone. Anyone else want to jump in? So, you know Judge Richard Posner, right? I'm sure you've seen opinions in various cases. No? Okay. He's still alive. He's not well. He's quite ill now. But many years ago, he actually wrote a paper saying that selling children was rational. That there actually should be a market for selling children, in part because adoption is so corrupt and people are already making money, might as well make it above board. I know Eric. I know Posner's son. I'm glad he didn't sell you, right? He's not a professor, so it's good that his son wasn't sold. But it's not a crazy thought. All right, anything else you want to add? All right. So of course, right? Of course. Why am I wasting 30 minutes of class time on this question? Because the Moore case turns almost entirely on whether these cells are property. If these cells are property, then Moore has a valid cause of action and conversion. If they're not property, perhaps they're quasi-property, if you will, then there's no cause of action. Jen, did you hear that?
Donate your body to science, doesn't it become abandoned property?
Okay, so I forgot or body donation. Let me address that, right? So the key word there is donate, not sell. Donate. So for whatever reason, when you donate your body, your organs, it's not considered commercialization. Why? Because you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. This was maybe, I think, Hayden's point before, right? So you can donate a kidney, right? You can donate your organs, your driver's license is your little heart, right? You're an organ donor. You can donate a bone marrow, which is it's a procedure. They take this stuff out of your bones. I don't really understand how it works, but you can donate bone marrow. You can't sell it. And in fact, there's extensive litigation where these groups have tried to pay people to donate bone marrow because it's a very painful procedure. It's not pleasant. They want to donate bone marrow? Oh my goodness! So it's painful, right? How long did it take for your procedure?
I remember I passed out after it, and I had to take calcium pills for probably like a week.
But it wasn't. But you're glad you did it?
Yes.
Did you know someone who needed it? Was it a family member?
Yes, but I wasn't a match.
The
person I did it with was a match for somebody else.
Okay, yeah. So the bone marrow is bone marrow cancer, right? Usually for most people. Anyway, but they basically suck stuff out of your bones. It sounds painful, and she has to work on it. But you're not compensated for it, right? You did because you're a good person. You are. I've never done it. I'm an awful person. It's true. You know, it's funny. I saw a survey. So you know, you have these teaching evaluations, right? Which you all evaluate us on. You know what the number one determinant on the teaching evals was for students? Whether you're a good or bad professor, right? It was whether students were satisfied with their grades, right? So students, it's not even whether you're a tough grader or a lenient grader, it's whether they're satisfied with their grades. So students were not happy with their grades, the evals tanked, which is why in law school, you all hate it because your evals come first and then come the exams. In fact, very often my evaluations, I wish we could evaluate Blackwood after we get our scores, right? Which proves the point. So anyway, so maybe I'm an awful person, I don't know. But the question that Jen posed is fair, right? If you're not paying for it, it's commercialized. All right, let's do the facts. Stephanie, you're patiently waiting. Okay, you're just like dreading to hear next. You want to please give me the facts in Moore versus Regents of California?
So Moore went to Regents for the treatment.
I'm sorry, a little bit louder. I'm having trouble hearing you.
So Moore went to Regents for the treatment, and he was told it was life-threatening and his spleen should be removed. So they removed his spleen, but they didn't tell him that the cells that they removed and the spleen were going to be used for commercial research, and that Regents was going to have a financial benefit.
Good.
And so he ended up, after the surgery, having to come back and get more research done, but they didn't tell him that it was because of the commercial research that they were doing. He thought that it was because of his leukemia and his treatment. So he didn't know that the hospital was getting benefits, and eventually he found out and filed for conversion along with other courts.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. All right, so excuse me. Let me give you some background. This stuff is not in the case, but I'll just give you some background because the facts here are fascinating. So Moore was working on an Alaskan pipeline. You ever do any pipeline work? This is hard work. If you ever meet someone who worked on a pipeline, they are hardcore because you're basically in this freezing weather, putting these pipes into the wilderness. It's not a pleasant experience. I have a professor friend who did this for years, and he has some good stories. He started getting sick. His gums were bleeding. His belly was getting swelled. He had bruises all over his body. Guy was 31 years old, young man. He thought he was dying. Okay? He went to the hospital at UCLA. They measured his spleen. A spleen is this organ that filters blood. A usual spleen weighs about 1 pound. His spleen weighed 22 pounds. So, I mean, it just blew up many, I don't know how big it was, but it was big. It was a really big spleen, right? They said, we have to take out your spleen. And then he signed a consent form, as you always do when you go to a hospital, and says, I consent to have my severed tissues disposed of or cremated. He didn't think anything of it. So he signed the form, whatever, and he took out a spleen. Then he moved back to Seattle. He became an oyster salesman. Sounds like a fun job. Not really. You ever go to the fish market in Seattle, the Pike Street Market? It's this huge fish market. They throw fish across. It's pretty cool. So then he lived in Seattle for a number of years, from 1976 to 83. And every now and then his doctor would say, Dr. Gold would say, hey, can you come on by to Los Angeles so we can do a checkup? And, you know, the guy's like, I don't know, whatever, right? Then after a while, he's like, well, do I really need to go? And the doctor started paying for his airfare. And he put him up at a fancy hotel, the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. And at this point, Moore's like, all right, something's up, right? I'm just a random guy. I'm selling oysters. Why is this doctor giving me? Can you get a doctor to even call you? My God, like just getting a doctor on the phone is impossible. He's flying him across the country. So he's like, something's up. What Moore didn't know was the cells were valuable. Okay, now let me explain why a cell is valuable. For most people, when you take a cell out of their body, take their blood or spleen, whatever, the cell dies. right? In your body, cells multiply. This is why if I cut you, your skin heals, you generate new cells, right? Or if you lose blood, you generate new blood, right? It's an amazing part of your body that your cells regenerate. Just it's a miracle of nature. But when you take a cell of the body, if I were to cut some skin and put it on the table over there, it'd be dead. It would not continue to replicate. Moore was unique. His cells continue to replicate outside the body. And to be very scientist here, I don't fully understand how this works. I try to read it and just I don't feel confident in explaining, but it works. I couldn't tell you how. Moore's doctor, Gold, put in a patent based on this cell line of how to generate new cells. And the basis of the cell line were Moore's cells. So the cells that he was selling, oh God, I should say it. The cells that were being sold were not actually the cells that came from his body. Instead, you had this initial sample of cells that generated new cells. So what's actually being sold were the new cells that reproduce outside of Moore's body. Everyone get that right. No one is selling cells that were ever in Moore's body. Rather, what's being sold are cells generated from it. Right? So you have a little dish of cells here from his body, and then they take a bajillion cells from that. Bajillion's not a real number, but we're talking a lot of cells. Okay, so eventually, Moore realizes something's up. And then Gold gives him a new consent form. And the consent form says, I grant to California University all rights in my cells, which may be developed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so at first, Moore said, yes, I consent. But then he said, something wasn't working. Something was off. So he said, I do not consent. The doctor calls it, you circled the right. And he said, oh, well, I made a mistake. Then he flew back home to Seattle. And then the doctor mailed him the form. And Moore didn't reply. Then Moore did what he should have done very early on, was get a lawyer. Always get a lawyer. And that's when it went to litigation. So Dr. Gold has spent nearly 7 years developing a cell line called Moore, right? MO. And it was worth billions of dollars. Billions with a B. In the 90s, so it's even worth more today. All right, and we get the facts. Now, did anyone ever read this book or perhaps watch the movie, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks? Anyone ever read this book or see it? Excellent book. It came out about 10 years ago. And I'm going to actually show you a clip of the movie. It was made by Oprah Winfrey maybe 2-3 years ago. It's on HBO. Good movie. Usually movies based on books are not good. This one's actually, I think, pretty authentic. Maybe you don't like it. I don't know. I liked it. And the premise of this movie is that Henrietta Lacks was a poor black woman living in Baltimore. She had cancer, and she went for treatment at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And they treated her, but they also took a sample of her cells. And they noticed that her cells would keep regenerating over and over again. And they built a line of cells from her called HeLa, H-E-L-A, from Henrietta Lacks. Right, HeLa. And this cell line is worth billions of dollars. And to this day, the family, the Henrietta Lacks family, is fighting a ton of the money. And they're actually making some progress to sort of share their revenue, but we're talking a significant amount of money. So I'll just play a clip, which I think might inform some of the discussion. So the setup here is that the author of the book, her name was Rebecca Skloot. What's her name? Skloot, yeah. She's a reporter. And she wants it to be the Lacks family to talk to them about their mom, because mom had died many years ago. So the setup here is the reporters going to their house in Baltimore. I hope this works. All right, see if this works.
Take your time, baby. You like to wish different now? Hey, Miss Rebecca.
Mommy.
This is our father.
Nice to meet you.
Ma'am. Morning, since after 2 o'clock, you just taking Barbara the morning coffee? Miss Rebecca, you better run while you can. Pay him no mind. Pops, did you know Mama Sal's gonna make Stevie Wonder see? Don't surprise me none.
They're not actually being put into people's eyes for cells, but
Hey, Pop, Miss Rebecca wanna know everything Dale always asking about.
I'm writing a book about Henrietta, but what I'm missing is information about her and her life, what she liked to do. You know, she was born in Roanoke.
That's right. Raised in Clover. Didn't like Baltimore much. So every summer she'd get on down to Clover, call herself tending a little tobacco. Picking, stringing, even after she got sick.
And when did you first hear about your wife's cells? And
Hopkins called, said, come on up there because she died. They want to do an autopsy. They said, help your children in case they come down with cancer. When I went to claim the body, none of them doctors told me nothing about keeping her alive in them tubes.
what do you expect? I wouldn't go to Hopkins to get my toenails cut. Remember when we were little? If you were bad, the old folks would threaten to put you out so them Hopkins night doctors could get you.
I remember.
Hopkins was known for snatching black folks, experimenting on them.
You'd be surprised how many people disappeared in East Baltimore. Snatch them right off the street. Well, it might be a myth. You never know.
You know what is a myth? Everyone's saying Henrietta Lacks donated themselves. She didn't donate nothing. They took them and didn't ask. So that is to me the story and why it needs to be told. If this is something that's going to help mankind, I can't imagine someone not wanting to help but be forthright. Inform the family.
Just show a little respect.
Drop a little note. A postcard. Something.
Hopkins say they gave themselves away, but they made billions.
A girlfriend of mine's brother-in-law worked in a lab over in D.C. She introduced us, and he said, Lax, that's funny. For years, I've been working with a celibate woman who died of cervical cancer named Henrietta Lacks, and goes on to explain how anytime he wants more, all he has to do is order them from a supplier, like everybody else. Dave's got gangrene. Toes need amputating. Sonny, a bad heart, Lawrence, high blood pressure. And Dale's got run herself into the ground over all the wrong that's been done. This family's the only ones have made time off of their own mother's cells.
All right, that's all played for now. I'll put just one more set. There's Oprah.
Hello?
If you're gonna write this book about my mama and want my help, first, you gotta tell everybody her name wasn't no Helen Lane or whatever they sometimes say. Second, everybody talk about Henrietta Lacks got 4 kids. That ain't right. She got 5. Because my sister Elsie got sent away to that Crownsville place, and I don't know why. So we are not leaving my sister out.
All right, you get it's a good movie. If you have HBO, I encourage you to watch it. But I want to play that clip because I think it brings the Moore case into it's a full screen. It brings the Moore case sort of into focus. They don't see the movie. Have any thoughts on it or the book you want to add? They actually did a decent job turning a book into a movie. Usually it's a dreadful process when actually work. You agree, Jen? You saw the book and the movie both?
We had to read it in
8th grade. I'm old. Yeah. It's okay. When I first started, I was very close to your age. Now I'm not. So it happened. But yeah, this came out when I was in law school, I think. Yeah, it was a good book. All right, so let's actually talk about the Moore case, the opinions. There are several opinions, right? There's several opinions. So first off, who I forgot? Kylie? I'm keep saying it wrong. Sorry, Keely. So Keely, what did the lower courts do here, please? Okay, so what were the 2 claims? Let's just make sure we know what the 2 claims were. Well, the two major claims. There were more than 2. What were the 2 major claims?
So the lack of informed consent and conversion.
Good. So they did not give sufficient informed consent before they took themselves. Does everyone agree that's what was violated? Yeah. So that one's not very important, right? The form that they said was a lie. Right? All it said was we're going to dispose of your cells. They didn't actually tell them what we're using it for. So Camille, what's the remedy for a breach of informed consent. Let's just focus on that for a minute. What's the remedy?
What if the actual damages, like money?
Yeah, so how do you, what are the actual damages there? Can you get a cut of the patent? No. What are your damages limited to, Camille?
The actual harm done to you,
As a result of,
the lack of informed consent.
do you think those damages are very high?
I don't think so.
Did Moore suffer a lot of damages because they lied to him on the form?
No.
No. Did they harm him? Was there a negligent procedure? Did he have any bodily injury? Did he incur any costs? You can imagine, right? Imagine he was paying for his own airfare to Seattle, from Seattle to Los Angeles. And the doctor's lying, you need to come here for a checkup. And in fact, they were coming there to harvest his cells. And he was paying his own airfare, hotel, transportation. I think he claimed damage. Saying, look, you misled me. You induced me to pay for these travel costs, so pay me back. So the damages are his actual. What did he actually suffer costs? But his hotel, they paid for his airfare, at least at the end. So the actual damages we're not talking about a lot. The ball game, though, is on conversion, right? That was the reason why they went to court. So Cooper, help us out here. Remind us from, you don't have to stand, I promise. What's conversion? I just had a flashback. Oh my God. There it is. Let him finish. I know.
Interference with the object that the person would be expected to pay the full value.
Okay, good. So if I come over and I steal your laptop, is that a conversion?
What, I'm sorry.
So if I come over there and steal your laptop, is that conversion?
It depends.
It depends on what?
If it gets returned or not.
I don't give it back.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the measure of damage to steal your laptop? If I convert your laptop.
Like, $1,000.
Yeah, whatever the laptop's worth. Okay, now different example, Cooper. What if you have a dairy cow and it makes, 10 gallons of milk a day? I don't know how many gallons of milk a day it makes, but the cow makes 10 gallons of milk a day. And I steal your dairy cow. What's in the measure of damages? I convert it. Is it just the value of the cow?
No, it would be any future profits.
Right, so let's say the cow lives, 5 years, makes X gallons of milk a day. You can sue me for the lost profit you've had by selling that milk, right? Yeah. All right, so the conversion tort's very significant. It's not just the value of the item, right? If it's like a piece of jewelry or whatever, fine, the value of the jewel. But if it's something that generates revenue, so a milk cow, I think is a good example, you can actually get the value of the milk that would have been produced. Because if you had the cow in your farm and it keeps milk, you could sell the milk in the marketplace, right? I didn't get into the with the selling of the body parts, but selling eggs, which is basically chicken embryos. Ooh, yeah, I don't want to think about that, do you? It's okay. Move on. All right, so Julius, if the conversion tort was successful in this, what would the measure of damages have been for the for Mr. Moore? Let's say conversion worked. Let's say the dissent prevailed, right? What would have been the measure of damages for conversion? How much of the billions of dollars would he have gotten? I mean, let's just say it's $3 billion, right? The total amount generated, right? How much of that goes to Mr. Moore? All of it? Some of it?
Yeah, but
That's a good. Well, think about it, right? Did the cells just sort of magically jump out of his body and start like running around and producing everywhere? So what was done to make the cells go from A to B?
so like they would pick it up from
and whether it's counted on the loss, it would be considered started, I guess, in the
Right, but how would John Locke look at this situation, Billy? What would John Locke say? You have this guy with these amazing cells in his body, and you have this scientist, Dr. Gold. What would John Locke say?
for more you can say that like not getting poverty because there was nothing other than his body naturally producing.
So who actually did the hard work here?
The researchers.
Yeah.
I guess those.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Julie. So under a labor theory, right, it's not obvious how much that money Mr. Moore even got. Right. I'm sure. Yeah, his lawyer, Julie, is right. 100% right. The lawyer says gets everything. That's not necessarily right. He would get probably something, right? Because literally, the doctor mixed his labor with Moore's body cells. So Moore's got some cut. So the conversion, let's even say 10%, right? Whatever the number is going to be, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, right? We're talking a lot of money. You're with me so far. All right, so there were opinions in this case. Someone asked me in the notes or the chat, do we need to know the names of the opinions? At least in this one you do. I think it'll be useful for our discussion, right? So we have the majority opinion by Justice Pinelli. Okay. We have a concurrence by Justice Arabian. We have dissents from Justice Broussard and Mosk. So we have 4 separate opinions. So Gabe, here, Gabe. So walk me through the majority opinion, please.
They said that there's no conversion, there's only a breach of fiduciary duty.
Okay, so let's go back to the question at the beginning. According to the majority, are these cells property?
They're not.
Why not?
The courts property, like way differently than body parts, so there's no real comparison.
Okay, let me try it differently. Who gets to decide, Gabe, what is property? Who gets to decide what is property? I'll give you the same question. Who gets to decide what is or is the legislature, right? So why might this question still belong to the legislature?
Maybe because there's nothing case like this before.
Okay, very good. So actually, let me ask you a follow-up question. Was there any judicial precedent, any case or court resolving this issue? No, there's not. So again, what should a court do when there's no judicial precedent resolving an issue? You see these questions popping up, right? In the Fox case, in the duck case, right? In the baseball case, right? In the whale case. What do we do? So master where there's no clear judicial precedent resolving an issue. What are their choices? The example choices. Yeah, right. So I think she gave it the 2 options, right? So one option is they can decide themselves. But you know what? We don't have any precedent. We don't have any law on this. Let's just do it ourselves. And that's what the dissenters say. We'll get to the dissents in a few minutes. The other option is a little more curious. So this maybe is an unfair question for our foreign students, but there's not really a process by which our courts can send a request to the legislature. What do you guys think, right? That can't be done. Remember this Florentine case, right? The one judge said, let's go call the governor up and see what he thinks, the executive. Right? That's not done, usually. right? Although there have been instances in American history when presidents have been asked Supreme Court for advice and they sort of given it to them under the table. It happens. But you're not supposed to do that. But Daniel, let me ask this question. So the court can't, call up the legislature and say, what do you think? Well, what can the court do if they're not sure what the legislature thinks? Well, what's their other option? They either decide themselves or do what? If they can't decide, what happens here? Nothing. Who wins this case then? The doctor, exactly right. Thank you. Very good. Right. So option A is what the dissenters. They said, you know what? Let's just make up some rule. Let's do a common law style, right? The other option, it's we don't know what the legislature thinks here. We can't ask them their opinion. So the answer is we leave the law where it is. We don't extend the law any further. There's no judicial precedent authorizing a conversion cause of action. And we're not going to make one here. So Dr. Gold, you win because there's no valid cause of action against you. This is a hard question, right? How does a judge know when to stand by and do nothing, or to perhaps creatively extend or interpret the law to reach a different result? Think of the murder case, the Splunkian case, right? You have a statute. There's no self-defense exception in the statute, but the courts created it. Is that right or wrong? We have laws here governing disposal of tissue, but there's nothing about profit off of cell lines because the legislature never considered it. So this is an important question that you shall think about, is who decides, right? Who gets to decide issues? Do the courts get to decide? Do the legislature get to decide? Or stated differently, if the courts don't decide and the legislature does nothing, then it's the doctors who are deciding because they're the ones sort of running the show. Bear with me. All right, so this was largely a case of first impression, but statutes, right? Maria, let me ask you a question, please. Has the California government passed any laws that affect how these citizens are treated? Are there any laws out there in the California government? Yeah, the California government passed any laws respecting or concerning how these tissues are treated, how these cells are treated. Well, they passed something.
Yeah.
What happened after the cells were moved to the body?
They restricted how the cells may be used, I think.
Well, in general, right? If you go to a surgery, right, and they take out some tissue, what happens to that tissue after it's body? They give you the little plastic bag, everything in the bag, you bring it home and put on your own.
They passed statutes about how to get rid of it.
Good. So you can burn it or bury it or clean it, right? Why do you think the legislature passed laws saying you have to destroy, burn it or cremate it or destroy the tissue? This is an obvious reason. Why don't you just bring it home and hand it to them like, they replace your part of your car and you the old part of the box, right? Why don't you get your old kidney back when you take it out?
Because it's biological material.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because you feel sick. Don't even think of it, right? I mean, look, so if you ever go to a mechanic, and maybe this is a old trick, but and you ask them to replace a part, you always ask, give me the old part. That way they actually gave you a new part, right? It's maybe in New York people do that, maybe not here. But friends, scams. But if you go to and there's some bodily tissue, right? Although I did have a tooth thing, and they gave me a little tooth. I guess that's different. Tooth they don't care about. Even with a baby, right? You can get the cord blood extracted. We have to actually have a special courier pick that up because it's considered biological waste, right? You can take the cord blood from the baby's umbilical cord, but I couldn't bring that home. I could put it in my freezer. I have to basically have this very expensive facility that stores their cord blood year round. Anyway, it's probably a waste of money, but I don't know. All right. So then, James, what do we make of the statute, right? We have the statute saying after the tissue is extracted, the hospital is destroyed. What lessons do we take from that statute? What lessons do we learn from that?
So the court says that basically that's so, different from, it can't be considered, it can't be considered property if the statute is, already done, you have to dispose of it.
Does this suggest a look at this question differently? We're trying to figure out what would the legislature do here. What does the statute tell us that the legislature can?
I guess it gives the insight into the legislature doesn't think that, your cells should be property.
Very good. All right, so if the legislature treats cells as basic garbage, that should be disposed of and cremated, that doesn't suggest the legislature thought it was valuable. Even more importantly, who's disposing of the tissue? Is the person disposing of his own tissue? Who gets disposed of it? Public service. No. So does the legislature think this is copyright at all that belongs to the citizen, the person who has surgery? Whose copyright is it, if anyone's? The hospital. Hospital, right? The majority says the hospital took it out. It stands to reason the hospital thought it belonged to the property. So there's not like a strong argument that the legislature, right? The court says that these laws drastically limited a patient's control over their cells. The court says this law eliminated some of the rights ordinarily attached to property. Think of the bundle of rights. You can't sell your tissue. You can't buy this tissue. You can't put it on your mantle at home or your fireplace. You have nothing. Once it's out of your body, it's garbage. It's burned. It's cremated. The state destroys it. As the legislature says, we cannot assume that the state would intend these cells to be property. Brock, how does the dissent respond to this argument, Justice Mosk? How does he read the statutes a little bit differently? But you're right, but on this statute, does he think the statute is anything to do with the state? Why not? Allow it. They didn't incinerate the cells. Well, that's true, but I'm on the legislation, right? Why not? You said it, but why does legislation not concern we have here? Did they destroy the cells? Okay. So what the dissent says is legislation was not about destroying cells. That didn't happen here. Right? These were not destroyed because they were kept valuable. So really the statute says nothing at all. So this is a broader lesson about. Very often courts are confronted with a situation the legislature did not directly address. And you have to think, all right, how creative are we going to get, right? How much are we going to look at a statute passed years ago and say, well, they did this, they were probably intended to do this, right? You're extending a statute. The majority says we're not going to extend the statute. The Senate says we'll extend it. This is not unique. Think of the Spelunking case. There's no self-defense exception to the statute. There's no exception about killing people in the cave where you're about to die. But would the legislature have intended the statute to apply in this situation? This is a very common move that judges make, where they say, we don't think the legislature would have intended this result, so we don't read the statute in this way. You'll see it all the time. Okay? All right, so really what happens here is the majority decline to extend the conversion to a new context. All right? The majority talks a lot about public policy, right? So, Tyler, what are some of the policy arguments the majority discusses here?
The first was the protection, compensation rights to make their own decisions, their own medical decisions.
Okay, tell me more.
Basically, the majority thought that if they decided that the hospital has the right, maybe setting that precedent that people can decide what they want to do their body, operate multiple
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let me ask you another question. What would have happened with research if the dissent prevailed? What would happen with biomedical research if the dissent prevailed?
It would have been harder to research because of third parties who aren't involved in that sort of thing. So, they wouldn't have like, concerns like this.
Right, so Ryan, what had also happened to all the other cell lines, like in the lax and otherwise? We start paying out to families and people who have cells. Yeah, we're paying more.
So not only would it put strain on research, but like economically, it would hurt society as a whole because you're paying families for using that research for the benefit of society. If it makes them sick, they could use this.
Well, that's Henry Lax's family, right? Yeah, I mean, that's why I played that clip. The family Henry Lax is not too happy. The other one is not getting money. So look, so the court's making basically a labor theory type argument that we see in the Whale case. It was on the Pearson v. Post dissent, right? That if we remove the incentives for research, the industry will die. And people will be worse off. There won't be oil for whales, right? There won't be foxes for hunting. That if we take out the incentives, that this research will simply vanish. Now, let's just think about this for a minute, right? That's M-A-R, Margot. Margot, right? Remember, engage that. Margot. Let's say that again, the dissent prevailed. Is there any way to know in advance whose cells are valuable? Before you think about a body. No, there's no way to know. And by the way, just to be obvious, the reason why again the spleen was because the cells keep replicating, right? The thing that made it so valuable was killing him. The reason why Henry Lax had cancer was probably because his cells kept generating it. That's what cancer is. Cancer is your cells keep generating over and over. That's what cancer is, right? So he had magical cells that were killing him. So removing this ginormous thing saves his life. Just I want you to understand that. Margo, back to you. You don't know in advance if someone's cells are valuable. Right? You only know if you take them out and you run them in labs and do things with them, right? How could you possibly pay people or even request permission in advance to let people work? Right? How could you reach a license? We'll pay you X dollars for your cells, you don't know what they're worth. How would that even work? Yeah, the doctor said, we're going to take your cells, they might be valuable. We don't have to work, but maybe we'll decide later. Is that a valid contract? Can you do that? And say, we'll decide how much it's worth later?
Or just consent to like take the cells in.
It's not, no, not just saying take it, it's take it plus commercialization. You get X% to the sales. But the patients start negotiating and say, no, that's too low. I want 50%. Doctor, sorry, you're gonna die. Sorry, you got spleen staying in there. What do you think? How do you do that? How do you actually run a commercial scheme where someone's on the operating table, damn, when you take your cells out, please sign this. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna sign it. But you just destroy the cells, which could save a million lives.
Other issues about incentivizing people to come in and try and figure out if they have valuable cells or whether they could.
Charlie, let me ask you a question. Could the forget the court, could the legislature's practice solution that would work?
With advice from the company employees, people in finance,
What would that look like? Do you know idea?
they would separate it from the actual, die, or, I have to decide before I die. And that would be something that they could consent to afterwards. Or advance to apply for that situation. And maybe yourself would be worth a very small amount of money first. And there's some sort of organs, what you're entitled to get out of it in the event that it's commercialized and profitable. Where you restrict research, some sort of middle ground basis. You want to get much more upfront.
All right. Anyone else? Yeah, very good. Anyone else have thoughts how this could possibly work? Because then you don't know if it's valuable. You take it out and like investigate. But once you take it out, it's already out and you can't put it back in. I guess you could, but not safely. Anyone else want to comment? So I think what the majority is saying is this is really messy. This is really complicated. To Shadi's point, we need experts. We need competent scientists, finance people to structure this. We're judges. Let us not take an old conversion tort, which Cooper read for us without standing up, right? Let us take this old conversion tort, which was designed hundreds of years ago for a very different situation, stealing cows. Let's not extend the conversion tort to the context of body cells. Remember, judges took the rule of capture and applied to oil and gas, which made no freaking sense, right? They applied the rule of capture to water, which makes no sense. So here the judge said, yes, but no thank you. We are not going to extend an old doctrine about stealing cows to the context of organs. Vigorously disagree. This is not for us. The dissent, though, says this gets things backwards, right? Margot, number 2. Margot, why does dissent say no way? We're not going to do this. Dissent is very vigorous at this point.
So basically, the dissent is arguing that it was about the patenting of the cells that he like should have gotten the money for it before they patented.
No, you're giving me something different. I don't care about the patents. Why is doing nothing not an option here? Why does the court have to do something here, according to the dissent?
Because of the ethical and moral like ramifications from not.
What is the consequence of doing nothing here?
Because then like patients can be taken advantage of like all the time. Like this would start happening more often, and doctors would say, just basically do the same thing.
What does Mr. Moore get if the court does nothing here?
Or he gets to live like.
Well, he's alive, right? He's right there. But look, they could have taken his spleen out and just disposed of it, cremated it, then he'd be still alive. Sarah, what's the cost of doing nothing here, according to the dissent? What's the cost of doing nothing?
I guess the patient loses out.
It's an injustice, right?
Yeah.
And does dissent feel compelled to address this injustice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, some judges have this a desire to do justice. Justice shall you pursue, as the scripture says, right? And if they see an injustice, they're going to address it. Even if it means taking an old tort, conversion, and extending it to a novel circumstance that never been done before, right? Lurking, though, in the background is morality, right? We have this concurrence from Arabian, Justice Arabian, who says, I love this quote. He says, Moore has asked us to recognize the right for profit. He entreats us to treat the human vessel, the single most venerated and protected subject in any civilized society, as equal to barest commercial commodity. He urges us to commingle the sacred with the profane. He asks much. Christina, let me ask you a question, please. You've been in a lawsuit now a semester or so. Have you ever seen a decision like this, like that concurrence decision, just like this read to you? Ever seen a judge talk at morality like that? No, what do you think about that?
I think they have to weigh the morality of the situation that hasn't been addressed.
Can courts weigh morality? Is that their job?
They can if they want to.
Should judges, that's how I'll change it then. Should judges be weighing morality?
I think if it applies, they can, or should.
So how's a judge? A judge should know what the law is, right? There's statutes, there's cases. Is there a morality book that judges should look to?
Yeah. No, but I mean like statutes and.
But that's not morality. There's nothing in the statute about morality.
Yeah, but they base those things off morality.
Oh, what do you mean the laws are based on morality? I was going to get there earlier. No one got there. There's a bunch of Hebrews in this row. I don't mean to do this. Yeah. Usually someone brings up morality very quickly. I only got to like Hayden. Why? Where's morality come from in the laws?
Just history, I think.
Thou shalt not kill.
Religion.
Thou shalt not steal. Conversion, right? Is there a role for courts to look to religion in deciding cases?
I don't think there's a role, but they do. I mean, everyone's belief system is based off of something, whether that be religion or history.
We finally got where we want to go. Good. Thank you, Christine. We're asking about an hour later, but perfect. Yeah. So look, this is also an issue to think about, right? What's the role for a judge's morality in these sorts of cases? Maybe you could argue that the rule is zero, right? There should be no role for judges to incorporate the morality decision. But then Christina makes a fair point. Virtually all of our laws are premised on morality. Why is there a ban on killing? Why is there a ban on prostitution? Why is there a ban on selling children? My goodness, right? It's based in some sense that this is immoral. If it goes too far, opens a can of worms. Someone said that, right? I think it was Aaron, right? Based on what? Some innate sense of what's right and wrong. We have morality, right? Even immoral people have morality. They just don't have very good morals, right? We all have morality in some regard, and the judges are looking to it. All right? Questions so far? So let me try to wrap up. We have a few minutes left. I'll sort of make this. Hope this makes sense. The issue of what is property is not just a technical question that's very boring, that's very bland, right? It touches, it implicates very deep aspects of who we are as a society, right? Because once you say something's property, it comes with that bundle of sticks. You can buy it, you can sell it, you can destroy it. I mean, what if, to use the example of the indentured servitude, what if basically you volunteered to be put into a game where you're just being hunted as a person? It's like the most dangerous game. Maybe you read that in school. Oh, no. Squid Games, right? Oh, God, I'm talking about the most dangerous game. Squid Games, right? It's right? What if you volunteer for a game show where you're being hunted? That's the theme of the show, right? They basically have to do these competitions and they can kill you if you don't do it right. If you win, you get all this money. Why can't you do Squid Games? Class. Damn, I should have thought of it earlier. I did the best I can, right? But underlying all this is some sense of morality, like, wow, that goes too far. You guys are crazy. You can't be selling babies. You can't be volunteering for like murder game shows. Or Running Man, if you ever saw that old movie, right? So the case is at superficial level about conversion, but I think it touches things that are a lot deeper. Okay. Anything else? All right. So we are basically wrapping up with our topic of acquisition, right? Don't wrap up. I hate moving. The class isn't over yet, right? We're starting next class with this theory of the bundle of sticks, which is what we introduced today. And the most essential stick in this bundle, we say, is the right to exclude. And when you think about the reading statistics are very short. It's only like 5 or 6 pages. Trust me, you're going to love it. But there's a lot of thinking there, right? Is to what extent do we allow people to keep someone off our property? Question is not so obvious. All right, any questions? All right, good class today. All right, I'll do the exit poll. Please take a minute to just, if there are any questions or things on your mind, to enter. Turn this on now. I'll be in my office if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Thank you so much.
I meant to ask you this question.